I'm just not attracted to guys like you, my girlfriend told me, smirking like she'd just delivered a mic drop. I said I understood, until she discovered her gorgeous roommate was very attracted to guys like me. My appeal ratings skyrocketed overnight. This whole mess started about 10 months ago, and honestly, I'm still processing how everything unfolded. So I'm 29, work as a commercial HVAC technician making decent money, around $78,000, and I live in Phoenix. Not gonna lie, I thought I had my life together pretty well. Steady trade job with good benefits, own my truck outright, got a small emergency fund building up, even started investing a little in index funds. I'm not some corporate executive, but I'm doing all right for myself, especially considering I started from nothing. My dad was a mechanic who taught me the value of honest work, and my mom was a nurse who showed me how to treat people with respect. They both passed away in a car accident when I was 24, which honestly made me appreciate stability and genuine relationships even more. I'm not the type to chase flashy things or try to impress people with stuff I can't afford. I drive a reliable Ford F-150, live in a modest apartment, and spend my free time on hobbies that actually matter to me. I'd been dating this girl Brittany for about 14 months. She's 27, works in social media marketing, which basically means she posts Instagram content for local businesses and makes maybe $32,000 on a good year. But she acted like she was running some Fortune 500 company or something, always talking about her personal brand and how she was building her influence. Her apartment was filled with ring lights, phone tripods, and enough makeup to stock a department store counter. We met at a coffee shop where she was taking pictures of her avocado toast for 20 minutes before eating it. I was there reading trade magazines and working on my laptop, and she struck up a conversation about my vintage laptop. It wasn't vintage, just 3 years old and still perfectly functional, but apparently that counted as retro in her world. At first, her social media thing seemed kind of cute. She was energetic and outgoing, always planning photo-worthy dates and activities. But after a few months, I started noticing that everything we did had to be documented and staged. She couldn't just enjoy a sunset. She had to find the perfect angle, adjust the lighting, take 40 shots, then spend an hour editing them. We had this Sunday routine at this trendy coffee spot downtown called Brew and Bloom. Place charged like $6 for a basic coffee, but she insisted we go there because it was aesthetic for her posts. The exposed brick walls, Edison bulb lighting, and succulents everywhere made for good Instagram content, apparently. I'd usually bring my tablet to scroll through trade publications or work on this side project I'd been building, an app that helps people find good fishing spots based on water conditions, weather patterns, and recent catches from other users. I'd been working on it for about 8 months, teaching myself app development through online courses and YouTube tutorials. Nothing crazy, just something I enjoyed working on during my free time. The app idea came from my own frustration trying to find decent fishing spots around Arizona. Sure, there are the obvious lakes everyone knows about, but I wanted to find those hidden gems where you could actually catch something without fighting crowds of other people. So I started building a platform where users could share recent catches, water conditions, best times to fish, and even upload photos of their spots. That particular Sunday started normal enough. I was reading about some new HVAC efficiency standards while she was doing her usual photo shoot with her overpriced oat milk latte. She must have taken like 20 pictures from different angles. Overhead shot, side angle with the morning light, artistic partial face shot, sipping the coffee. The works. "The lighting is so perfect today," she said, adjusting her phone for the 15th time. "This is definitely going to get good engagement." I nodded absently, focused on an article about smart thermostat integration. That should have been my first clue that we were living in completely different worlds. After she finished her photo session and posted the carefully curated content, she put her phone down and gave me this look, like she'd been building up to something for a while. "Jake, I need to be real with you about something that's been eating at me." I looked up from my tablet, giving her my full attention. "All right, what's going on?" "I'm just not attracted to guys like you anymore." The words hung there in the air between us. Part of me wasn't even surprised. I'd been feeling her pulling away for months. She always seemed bored when I talked about anything I was passionate about, always making these little comments about how I should be more ambitious or social, always comparing me to guys in her Instagram feed who drove expensive cars or traveled to exotic locations every weekend. "What do you mean by guys like me?" I asked, genuinely curious to hear her explanation. She leaned back in her chair like she was explaining something obvious to a slow child. "You know, the blue-collar types who'd rather stay home working on random projects than go out and network with successful people. I need someone with real ambition, someone who's going places in life, Someone who understands the importance of social status and making the right connections. I could feel other customers glancing over as her voice got a little louder, more animated. I mean, look at Chad from my gym, she continued, apparently on a roll now. He's got this whole cryptocurrency investment business going, drives a BMW, always posting about his successes. That's the kind of energy I need in my life right now. Then came the kicker. She wanted to take some time apart so she could explore other options and figure out what she really wants. But she hoped we could stay friends because I'm really sweet and stable, and she values our connection. Sweet and stable, like I was a savings account instead of a person. Plus, she added with this patronizing smile, you're such a good guy, Jake. You deserve someone who appreciates your simple lifestyle. I'm just not that person anymore. Instead of getting defensive or begging her to reconsider, I surprised myself by staying completely calm. I looked at her for a long moment, processing everything she'd just said, then nodded slowly. You know what, Brittany? You're absolutely right. Her eyebrows shot up. That clearly wasn't the reaction she was expecting. She probably thought I'd argue, or get upset, or try to convince her I was worth keeping around. I've been thinking the same thing actually, just from the other direction, I continued, setting down my tablet. We're fundamentally incompatible. I'm looking for someone who values substance over appearance, who's interested in building something real instead of just performing for social media. Her face started to change as she realized this conversation wasn't going according to her script. I've noticed you treat our relationship like a continuous photo opportunity rather than, an actual relationship, I said, gesturing at her phone where she'd been editing pictures just minutes before. Always staging everything, always talking about me like I'm some home improvement project instead of someone you actually want to be with. The defensive walls went up immediately. That's not fair, Jake. I'm just trying to build something meaningful for my future. Social media is a real career path now. By constantly hinting that I should get a better job, by rolling your eyes whenever I mention my fishing app, by introducing me to people as your handy guy like I'm some kind of service provider instead of your boyfriend. She opened her mouth to argue, but I wasn't done. And let's be honest about the networking thing, I continued. You don't want me to be more social. You want me to be more profitable. There's a difference. I stood up, dropping cash on the table for both our drinks. Look, you want someone who's going to fund your lifestyle and boost your social media image. I want someone who actually likes who I am as a person. We should just end this cleanly instead of pretending it's working for either of us. As I walked out, I could feel her staring after me with this shocked expression. Pretty sure she'd expected me to fight for her or beg for another chance. Instead, I felt this weird sense of relief, like I'd finally acknowledged something I'd been avoiding for months. That evening, I was back at my apartment, a decent one-bedroom place I'd managed to buy 2 years earlier. It wasn't fancy. Basic kitchen, small living room, bedroom just big enough for my bed and dresser. But it was mine. Bought with money I'd saved by living below my means and working overtime when it was available. I was sitting at my small dining table working on my fishing app, trying to improve the GPS accuracy features, when my phone buzzed with a text. The message was from Emma, Brittany's roommate, which completely caught me off guard. In the entire time I'd been dating Brittany, Emma and I had maybe exchanged 50 words total. She was 26, worked as a quality control specialist at a local manufacturing company, and seemed to spend most of her free time reading or working on her own projects. Whenever I was over at their place, she'd usually just nod hello and disappear into her room or the kitchen. Hey Jake, heard about today and I'm sorry things ended rough. Random question, but I noticed a for rent sign went up at the duplex across from our place. Know the landlady personally if you're interested in checking it out? I stared at the message for a solid minute. This was really thoughtful, like genuinely considerate in a way I hadn't expected, especially from someone who had every reason to stay out of her roommate's drama and avoid picking sides. That's really nice of you to think of me, I texted back. Yeah, I'd definitely be interested in taking a look if you don't mind making the introduction. No problem at all. Mrs. Rodriguez is awesome. Retired high school principal, super fair with rent, and really takes care of her properties. Want to walk over tomorrow around 6? I can introduce you properly. The whole interaction felt surprisingly normal and helpful. No drama, no awkward taking sides, just one person being decent to another during a rough situation. It was refreshing after months of feeling like I had to walk on eggshells around Brittany's moods. The next evening, Emma walked me across the street to meet Mrs. Rodriguez. The duplex was exactly what I'd been hoping to find, but hadn't dared expect. 2 bedrooms, updated kitchen with decent appliances, small backyard perfect for grilling and maybe working on my truck, and most importantly, affordable rent in a good neighborhood. Mrs. Rodriguez turned out to be this sharp 68-year-old woman who took one look at my work references and started asking detailed questions about my trade background. She'd taught high school for 30 years before retiring and had that no-nonsense way of evaluating people that comes from dealing with teenagers. Emma tells me you're working on some kind of fishing application, she said, adjusting her glasses as we looked at the kitchen. My late husband was big into fishing, always complained about not having good information on where to go and when to go there. When I pulled out my phone and showed her the app interface, explaining how it aggregated water condition data, recent catch reports from other users, and weather patterns to suggest optimal fishing times and locations, her eyes actually lit up. This is the kind of practical problem solving I respect, she said, scrolling through the features I'd built. Too many young people today are working on nonsense that doesn't help anybody. You're building something genuinely useful. She asked intelligent questions about the development process, how I was handling user data privacy, and whether I had plans to monetize it eventually. I found myself explaining technical details I rarely got to discuss with anyone, and she followed along perfectly. By the end of the walkthrough, she'd not only approved my application, but offered me a deal on rent, $1,100 a month, instead of the listed $1,300, because as she put it, good tenants who build real things and treat people with respect are worth investing in. Over the next couple weeks, Emma helped me coordinate the logistics of moving, not in any obvious or dramatic way, just practical stuff that made the whole process smoother. She let me know when the utility companies were easiest to reach, mentioned which internet service providers had the best reliability in the area, even told me about a local appliance store that had good deals on used stuff. During these conversations, I started noticing something that honestly surprised me. Emma actually asked thoughtful questions about my work and seemed genuinely interested in the answers. When I mentioned a complex HVAC installation I'd completed at the local hospital, she wanted to know about the technical challenges and how commercial systems differed from residential ones. When I talked about my fishing app, she asked about the user interface design, how I was handling data storage, and whether I'd considered adding social features like user reviews or photo sharing. These weren't polite conversation questions. She was genuinely curious and offered insights from her own experience with quality control processes. You know, she said one evening while I was packing boxes, I never understood why Brittany seemed so bored when you talked about your projects. Software development is basically problem solving through logic and creativity, which is incredibly fascinating when you actually listen. It was such a simple observation, but it hit me hard. Here was someone who understood that my interests weren't boring or worthless. They were actually pretty cool when you took the time to appreciate them. Meanwhile, Brittany started showing up whenever Emma and I were discussing practical moving stuff. She'd hover in doorways with this tight-lipped expression, making passive-aggressive comments about how helpful Emma was being and how she'd never seen her be so interested in someone else's life. Don't you think it's weird that my roommate is more invested in your living situation than I ever was? She said one evening, when she caught us comparing internet service plans on my laptop. I mean, she's being awfully thorough about all this moving stuff. What Brittany didn't realize was that these supposedly mundane conversations about internet speeds and utility transfers were actually the first genuine intellectual connections I'd had in months. Emma understood the technical aspects of what I did for work and actually appreciated the problem-solving skills required. She asked intelligent questions about my app development process and offered insights that helped me think about features differently. About 3 weeks after I'd moved into the duplex across the street, I made a discovery that completely changed how I understood the past year of my life and Brittany's behavior. I'd been having dinner with Emma at their kitchen table, just leftover pizza and talking about this book on small business development she'd recommended, when Brittany walked through the front door and froze in the doorway like she'd caught us planning something illegal. The sight of us sitting there, actually enjoying each other's company, and having a real conversation in a way that apparently never happened during my entire relationship with Brittany, triggered something nuclear in her. Are you freaking kidding me right now? She snapped, keys still dangling from her hand. 3 weeks. 3 weeks since we broke up, and you're already over here with my roommate like this whole thing was some kind of elaborate setup? I looked up from my pizza, genuinely confused by her anger. We're eating dinner and talking about business development strategies. Not exactly a romantic conspiracy. But Brittany was beyond reason at this point. She turned to Emma with pure venom in her voice. And you? How long have you been planning this little betrayal behind my back? How long have you been waiting for me to get out of the way so you could make your move? That's when Emma did something that changed the entire trajectory of the situation. She stood up calmly, looked Brittany dead in the eye, and told the complete truth. Since the first week I met him, The silence in the kitchen was absolutely deafening. I've been attracted to Jake since the day you first brought him home, Emma continued quietly, and I've been frustrated watching you treat him like garbage for over a year. Brittany's face went completely white. Oh, so you're the loyal roommate who was just looking out for my best interests this whole time? No, Emma said, with this steady calm that I'd never heard from her before. I'm the person who's been anonymously encouraging Jake's fishing app development for months, because I actually think it's brilliant and wanted him to know that someone believed in his work. I stared at her, pieces of a puzzle suddenly clicking into place. Anonymous encouragement? Emma's cheeks turned slightly red, but she maintained eye contact. Those detailed user reviews on your App Store page from Fishing Enthusiast AZ? The comprehensive suggestions for new features you kept getting through your feedback form? The beta testing reports with detailed bug findings and user experience improvements? That was all me. My mind was completely reeling. For months, I'd had this incredibly supportive mystery user who left thoughtful feedback on my app, suggested clever improvements I hadn't thought of, and even helped identify bugs and user interface issues. This person had been more supportive and encouraging of my creative work than my own girlfriend had ever been. I couldn't stand watching Brittany dismiss your intelligence and creativity like they were character flaws instead of amazing qualities, Emma continued. Your app is genuinely innovative, and you deserve to know that someone out there appreciates what you're building. She pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots of all the feedback she'd submitted over the months, detailed technical suggestions, user interface improvements, even marketing ideas for how to grow the user base. It was incredibly thorough and helpful stuff that had actually shaped how I developed new features. I've been using your app for my own fishing trips, and it's honestly better than anything else available, she said. The data integration is clever, the interface is intuitive, and the community features you added last month are perfect. You should be proud of what you've built. Brittany's expression shifted from anger to something approaching panic as she realized that not only had her roommate been supporting me in ways she never had, but there was clearly a deeper level of understanding and intellectual connection happening that she'd been completely oblivious to. This is completely insane, Brittany said, her voice getting increasingly shrill. You're both acting like I'm some kind of villain here when I was just being honest about what I wanted in a relationship. That's when Emma dropped the bomb that made everything crystal clear and showed just how much she'd been paying attention to Brittany's behavior. You mean honest like you've been about your sugar daddy hunting on Instagram? Emma asked, pulling up something on her phone. Or honest about your ongoing flirtation with that cryptocurrency investor Chad from your gym? Brittany's face went completely white. I know about the late-night DM sessions with older guys who post pictures of their expensive cars, Emma continued relentlessly. The way your whole personality changes whenever you talk about men with real money. The multiple dating app profiles where you literally list minimum income requirements for potential matches. I felt this weird combination of vindication and disgust. My growing suspicions about her behavior over the past few months hadn't been paranoia or jealousy after all. Oh, and here's my personal favorite, Emma said with an edge in her voice I'd never heard before, scrolling through her phone. The way you've been calling Jake your practice boyfriend to your influencer friends. Like he was some kind of training wheels until you could land a real catch with actual money. The words hit me like getting punched in the stomach. Practice boyfriend. All those months of feeling like I wasn't good enough. Like I was disappointing her somehow. And she'd literally been treating me like a temporary placeholder while she shopped around for someone better. Chad told me everything, Emma continued without mercy. You've been asking him if he thinks you're settling by dating Jake, complaining that Jake doesn't make enough money to support the lifestyle you want, wondering out loud if you should hold out for someone with a Tesla and a downtown penthouse. The devastating irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. Brittany had been complaining to her potential upgrade about my supposed inadequacies and lack of ambition, while Emma had been secretly celebrating and supporting the very creativity, work ethic, and intelligence that Brittany found so boring and worthless. So no, Emma concluded firmly. I absolutely don't feel guilty about being attracted to someone who deserves better than being treated like a human stepping stone while you auditioned for sugar daddies on Instagram. Brittany's immediate response to having her behavior completely exposed was to launch what can only be described as a social media nuclear strike. Within hours of our kitchen confrontation, her Instagram stories were flooded with dramatic posts about fake friends who stab you in the back, and snake roommates who betray your trust when you're at your most vulnerable. She crafted this elaborate victim narrative where she was the innocent party who'd been blindsided by a calculated revenge plot, posted inspirational quotes about toxic people and betrayal, with captions like, "When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time," and sometimes the people closest to you are the ones planning your downfall. Her strategy seemed to be rallying our mutual friend group by positioning herself as the wronged party who'd been systematically manipulated by her supposedly loyal roommate and her vindictive ex-boyfriend, working together to destroy her happiness. But Brittany had severely underestimated how much her behavior over the past year had been noticed, discussed, and frankly criticized by people in our social circle. The first major crack in her victim narrative appeared when our mutual friend from my gym commented on one of her most dramatic betrayal posts. "Weren't you literally asking me 2 weeks ago if I thought that crypto guy Chad was relationship material while you were still supposedly happy with Jake?" That single comment opened the floodgates in a way Brittany clearly hadn't anticipated. Suddenly, other friends started sharing their own observations and experiences with her behavior. One of our friends from the hiking group posted about how uncomfortable he'd felt watching Brittany openly flirt with wealthy-looking guys at parties while I was standing right there. How she'd touch their arms, laugh way too loud at their mediocre jokes, and make pointed comments about how some men just have that natural success energy that's so attractive. Jessica, who worked with Brittany at one of her social media clients, shared screenshots of text conversations where Brittany had complained that I was too content with mediocrity and wasn't financially ambitious enough for a woman with real goals and standards. The most damaging revelation came from Sarah, who'd been at Brittany's birthday party just 4 months earlier. Apparently, Brittany had spent the entire evening apologizing to people for my presence, describing me as sweet but kind of basic, and explaining that she was trying to help him develop bigger career goals and social ambitions. Each new comment and screenshot systematically destroyed Brittany's carefully constructed victim narrative, revealing a consistent pattern of manipulative and disrespectful behavior that our friends had been quietly witnessing and discussing among themselves for months. But the final nail in the coffin of her social media campaign came from the most unexpected source: Chad himself, the cryptocurrency investor she'd been positioning as her potential upgrade and the catalyst for our breakup. "Brittany, I need to be completely honest with you," his public comment read. "You've been making me really uncomfortable with your advances for months now. I knew you had a boyfriend, and every time I tried to maintain appropriate boundaries, you'd push even harder. You kept asking invasive personal questions about my income and investment portfolio, suggesting we hang out alone outside the gym, making pointed comments about how your current relationship wasn't meeting your financial standards. It was completely inappropriate. And honestly, I felt bad for Jake because he seemed like a genuinely solid guy who didn't deserve to be disrespected like that." The revelation that her primary target had not only been rejecting her advances all along, but had actually felt sympathy for me completely demolished whatever remained of her reputation and victim narrative. The comments section of her post became an absolute graveyard of screenshots, personal stories, and first-hand accounts of Brittany's gold-digging behavior and manipulative relationship patterns. Friends started posting evidence of her contradictory statements. Screenshots where she complained about my supposed lack of ambition, while simultaneously bragging to other people about dating someone with a stable trade job and his own place. Messages where she called our relationship boring and limiting, while posting photos of us together with captions about being blessed with such an amazing, supportive partner. The hypocrisy was laid bare for everyone to see. The most telling and devastating revelation came when Lisa, one of our mutual friends, shared an actual voice message that Brittany had sent her just 2 weeks before our breakup. In the recording, you could clearly hear Brittany saying, "I mean, I love Jake as a person, but he's just not wealthy enough for me long term, you know? I need someone who makes serious money and has bigger financial goals. But he's perfect boyfriend material for right now. So stable and reliable and sweet, like the ideal placeholder while I figure out my real options." The systematic destruction of Brittany's reputation happened so quickly and thoroughly that by the end of that week, she'd deleted most of her dramatic posts and switched her entire account to private. But the damage was already done, and screenshots of everything had been saved and shared. Our entire social circle now had a crystal clear picture of exactly who she really was, and how she'd been treating not just me, but the entire concept of honest, respectful relationships in general. Brittany ended up moving out of the apartment she shared with Emma within 2 weeks of her social media implosion. She claimed she couldn't handle living across the street from the constant reminder of my roommate's ultimate betrayal. But what she really couldn't handle was the reality of watching two people build something authentic and genuine together, based on mutual respect, shared interests, and actual compatibility. As Emma helped Brittany pack up her extensive collection of ring lights, phone tripods, and designer clothes she couldn't actually afford, I learned the full extent of just how supportive Emma had been during the darkest months of my relationship. She'd been anonymously sharing my phishing app in relevant online forums and social media groups, encouraging my development work by leaving detailed and helpful technical feedback, and had even convinced Mrs. Rodriguez to offer me discounted rent by describing me as a genuinely good person being completely underappreciated by someone who doesn't deserve him. 6 months later, Brittany's carefully constructed influencer lifestyle had completely collapsed, while my life had taken a trajectory I never could have imagined. My phishing app had exploded beyond my wildest expectations. What started as a simple side project had grown into something genuinely successful. Over 85,000 active users, partnerships with local tackle shops and boat rental companies, even serious interest from major outdoor recreation companies about licensing the technology and scaling it nationally. The anonymous support, detailed feedback, and beta testing that Emma had provided during those crucial early development months had been absolutely instrumental in making the app as good as it became. Her quality control background had helped me identify and fix user experience issues I never would have caught on my own. Meanwhile, Brittany's social media career had imploded so spectacularly that it was almost hard to watch. The drama from her public meltdown had completely destroyed her credibility with the local businesses that had been paying her for promotional content. Her follower count had plummeted as people realized her lifestyle was all smoke and mirrors, funded by maxed-out credit cards and family money she was burning through at an unsustainable rate. She'd been forced to move back in with her parents after running out of money trying to maintain an image and lifestyle she simply couldn't afford. Last I heard, she was working part-time retail while trying to rebuild her social media presence. But the internet never forgets, and her reputation was permanently damaged. Emma and I had been officially together for about 4 months at that point, and our relationship was built on a completely different foundation than anything I'd experienced before. We'd spend evenings working on our respective projects, her quality control certifications, and me developing new app features. We'd go hiking on weekends, have long conversations about books and technology and ideas that actually mattered to both of us. She'd started helping with the business development side of my app, and her analytical background had been invaluable in improving user retention and engagement metrics. We were actually building something together instead of just performing a relationship for other people's benefit. That's when Brittany and Chad showed up at my front door. It was a Tuesday evening around 7 when I heard the knock. I opened the door to find both of them standing on my porch looking absolutely desperate and defeated. Brittany had clearly been crying recently, her makeup was smudged, and she looked like she hadn't been sleeping well. Chad looked uncomfortable as heck and kept glancing around like he didn't want to be there. "Jake," Brittany started, her voice shaky and uncertain. We really need to talk to you about something important. Please." I leaned against the doorframe without inviting them in, genuinely curious about what could have brought them to my door together. "What's going on?" Chad cleared his throat awkwardly. "Look, man, I know this is really uncomfortable for everyone, but we're in a pretty desperate situation and heard through mutual friends that you might be able to help us out." I raised an eyebrow. "Help you out with what exactly?" That's when the whole pathetic story came tumbling out. Chad's cryptocurrency investments had gone catastrophically wrong. He'd lost nearly $180,000 when some altcoin project he'd been heavily promoting turned out to be a complete scam. He was facing potential bankruptcy and even some legal issues for encouraging other people to invest in what turned out to be fraudulent schemes. Brittany had burned through her savings and maxed out multiple credit cards, trying to maintain her influencer lifestyle and image. She was looking at serious debt and had been forced to move back home with her parents, completely humiliated and financially ruined. But here's where the story gets really interesting. They'd heard through our mutual friend network that my phishing app was doing incredibly well, that I'd been approached by major companies interested in acquisition, and that I was potentially looking at a life-changing financial windfall. And they wanted in on it. "I know I messed up really badly," Brittany said, tears streaming down her face as she spoke. "I was immature and selfish, and I treated you terribly when you deserved so much better. But I've learned from my mistakes and grown as a person, and I think we could actually be really good business partners now. I have extensive marketing experience and connections in the influencer space that could be incredibly valuable for scaling your app." Chad jumped in with his own pitch. "And I understand the investment and finance side of things, even though I had some setbacks recently. We could help you navigate the acquisition process, maybe work out some kind of partnership arrangement where we help with funding and business development in exchange for equity, ... I looked back and forth between them. This woman who treated me like a temporary placeholder and this guy who'd been her intended upgrade target. Now both desperate and practically begging for help from the practice boyfriend they'd both looked down on and dismissed. So let me make sure I understand this correctly, I said slowly, letting the full irony of the situation sink in. Brittany, you called me mediocre and unambitious, treated me like I wasn't good enough for your standards, publicly humiliated me while secretly trying to trade up to someone wealthier. And Chad, you were the guy she was trying to trade up to, who knew she was in a committed relationship but was apparently cool with being her exit strategy. And now you both want me to save you from the consequences of your own choices? They exchanged desperate glances, clearly hoping I'd be the bigger person and help them out of the hole they'd dug for themselves. The thing is, I continued, enjoying this moment more than I probably should have. Emma warned me months ago that people like you two always come crawling back when they realize they made a huge mistake. People who treat others as disposable stepping stones only understand the value of loyalty and genuine relationships when they desperately need something. Brittany tried to interrupt with more apologies and promises. Jake, please, I know I hurt you terribly, but I've really changed and learned from this experience. I could bring so much value to your business but nothing, I cut her off firmly. You had your chance to be part of something real and meaningful. Instead, you chose to chase status symbols and treat people like garbage while you auditioned for a better deal. Emma saw the potential in my work when you saw it as a boring waste of time. She supported my dreams and ambitions when you were embarrassed by them. She's the reason this app succeeded and became valuable, not you. I could see the desperation growing in both their faces as they realized I wasn't going to be their financial salvation. Here's exactly what's going to happen, I said with finality. Absolutely nothing. You're both going to figure out your own problems the same way I built my success, through hard work, treating people with genuine respect, and building something of actual value instead of just chasing shortcuts and using people as stepping stones to something better. I started to close the door, then paused for one final observation. Oh, and Brittany? That practice boyfriend you were so embarrassed by and couldn't wait to upgrade from? Turns out he was exactly the kind of person worth investing in all along. You just never bothered to notice. As I shut the door firmly, I could hear Brittany starting to sob loudly and Chad trying to convince her that maybe they could find some other angle or approach to get me to help them. Emma appeared beside me in the hallway, having watched and heard the entire interaction from the kitchen. How does it feel? She asked, wrapping her arms around me with a smile. You know what? It feels absolutely perfect. 8 months later, I sold my fishing app to a major outdoor recreation company for $1.8 million. Emma and I used part of the money as a down payment on a beautiful house with a workshop where we could both pursue our projects and hobbies. We're planning our engagement for next spring and already working on our next app together, this time focused on hiking trail conditions and outdoor recreation planning. Sometimes the best revenge really is just living well and choosing the right people to build that life with. The last I heard, Brittany was working retail at the mall and still living with her parents, trying unsuccessfully to rebuild her social media presence. Chad declared bankruptcy and moved back to whatever small town he came from originally. Meanwhile, Emma and I wake up every morning grateful for each other and excited about what we're building together. Turns out when you finally stop accepting being treated like a placeholder, you create space for something genuinely worth having. Add to conversation.